Hello everyone, welcome to the Lang Focus channel and my name is Paul. Today's topic is Jamaican Creole, also known as Patois. Jamaica is an island nation in the Caribbean with a population of only around 3 million people. But it's made a cultural impact around the world because of its art forms such as reggae and dancehall music as well as dub poetry. Many English speakers have had the experience of hearing someone from Jamaica speak and understanding a little bit of it but not most of it.
And ain't nothing good at all. Boy, them people are really wicked, me I tell you. The just take out one of the flower and me I tell you, say, girl, that kill him with lick, me I tell you, say, boy, I'm sorry for you little pitney. God no.
That's because Patois partly descended from English, but not entirely. It's an English-based Creole language that developed in the 17th and 18th centuries through contact between African slaves and English-speaking slave owners. The island of Jamaica was first colonized by the Spanish, who brought the first African slaves there, and enslaved the native Taino people, until they were wiped out by violence and disease. But it was after the island was taken over by Britain in the year 1655 that the African population rapidly grew, as the British brought slaves from West Africa to work on sugarcane plantations. These Africans were intentionally separated from others who spoke the same language as them, so they wouldn't be able to communicate in secret and plan a rebellion. With no common language, they did their best under harsh conditions to use the English dialects spoken by their slave masters. They didn't learn the language formally, and they had to learn the language very quickly, which resulted in the development of a pidgin language. They adopted a basic vocabulary of English words and strung them together using a simplified form of the grammar of their native languages. Eventually, when they had children, those children learned the simple pidgin language as their native language, but expanded its features and use, making it a living language used for all parts of life. That was when the pidgin language became a Creole language. The term patois comes from French and can be used generally to refer to any kind of non-standard speech, but it's also how Jamaicans refer to their Creole language. Not all Jamaican patois is the same. There are various regional and local varieties around the island. One reason is that the slave owners spoke various different dialects of English. Another reason is the mountainous terrain and isolation of the different plantations and communities from each other. When a pidgin language becomes a Creole, it becomes more complex and new features arise to make the language sufficient for everyday use. That means that in communities isolated from each other, the new features might have been different. Also, the official language of Jamaica is not patois but English, and patois is spoken on a continuum with standard Jamaican English. That means that in some situations, some speakers will essentially be speaking standard English with a characteristically Jamaican accent, while in other situations, some speakers will mix English with varying degrees of patois. And at the very casual end of the spectrum, speakers might use Jamaican patois exclusively. In technical terms, pure patois is the basilect, while standard English is the acrolect, and in the middle lies the mesolect. The acrolect, standard English, is the prestige language and the language of social mobility, while patois is sometimes considered to be incorrect English or improper speech. But patois is a distinct language with its own phonology, grammar, and vocabulary distinctions. There's also another form of patois called Cromanti, or deep patois, which was used by the Maroons, descendants of slaves who escaped from the Spanish when the British invaded Jamaica and set up communities deep in the mountains. This form of patois is more heavily based in the Akan language than other forms of patois. Deep patois is now used as a ritual language in Maroon communities, but not as a daily spoken language. Vocabulary. The majority of patois vocabulary comes from English, but with pronunciation that has diverged widely from English. There's technically no standard way to write patois, only general tendencies, but those differences from English are usually reflected in patois spelling. For example, somebody, something,
something,
money, market, here, open, this, with. Notice that the th and the sounds of English th don't exist in Jamaican patois. While these spellings may look strange to people who know standard English, they're actually phonetic representations of speech, unlike English spelling, which was basically frozen in time several hundred years ago, and sometimes doesn't reflect current pronunciation. Sometimes words that have a final consonant cluster in English lose a consonant in patois. For example, respect. You'll notice that the words are often used differently.
Enough.
From English, enough means many or much.
Enough respect.
This means much respect.
Chat
is used as the general word for speak or talk.
Make.
From English make is used generally for causative meaning, like both make and let in English,
Make me tell you something.
meaning let me tell you something. And notice here, there's a different variant of the word meaning something. There are also lots of words that are created by compounding other simple words.
Nose hole.
Literally, nose hole. This means nostril.
And middle.
Literally, hand middle. This means the palm of your hand.
Yai water.
Literally, eye water. This means tear.
Red eye.
Literally, red eye. This means envious or covetous. This is actually a loan translation of a phrase in the Akan language of West Africa, ani bere. And that brings us to words that come from languages other than English. For example, the word for eat.
Nyam.
This word comes from a West African language, perhaps Wolof. The word for ghost.
Duppy.
This comes from Akan. The word for spider.
Anansi.
This also comes from Akan. The word for clumsy or awkward.
Bafan.
And there's a sprinkling of words from other languages. For example, the word meaning child,
Pitney.
which comes from the Portuguese word pequenino, a diminutive form of the word pequeno, meaning small. Variations of this particular word appear in numerous Creole languages around the world. Grammar. The basic word order of Patois is similar to that of Standard English. For example,
Me chat patois.
this means I speak Patois. The word order is subject, verb, object, as it is in Standard English.
Him a nyam the cake.
He is eating the cake. Again, this is SVO. Let's add a little more information here.
Him a nyam the cake one me bake.
He is eating the cake that I baked. This relative clause is introduced by a relative pronoun wa, which is the question word meaning what. In English, it would be strange to use what in this context, but we might use which. Notice that there's a definite article before the word cake, di. This is the equivalent of the in English. There's also an indefinite article, a, which is the obvious equivalent of Standard English a. This word here, a, looks like the indefinite article, but it's not. It's the equivalent of English is. In English, is before a present participle indicates the present progressive, that an action is ongoing. A functions the same way in Patois. Placing it before a verb makes it progressive. Instead of a, another word, de, can also be used.
Him de nyam the cake.
This also means he's eating the cake. De comes from the Igbo language, from the word di, meaning to be. A and de are both used as the copula as well, though slightly differently from each other. A is used for equative sentences.
Him a the doctor.
He's the doctor. De is used with a locative meaning, in other words, indicating location, as in this sentence.
Them they are Kingston.
They're in Kingston. Here, the word a is not a copula, but rather a preposition, meaning in or at. With adjectives, a copula isn't needed.
This here book ya all.
This sentence doesn't have the copula a, the equivalent of is in the Standard English translation. Also notice the demonstrative pronoun disya, which comes from this here. Just dis is also possible. We also see ya after book. It means here. Another similar sentence is,
This a one all book.
meaning this is an old book. In the first sentence, the adjective is the predicate, so the copula isn't needed. But if the adjective is part of a noun phrase, then a copula is used. One, the number one, can also function like an indefinite article. In this case, it would be strange to have a, the copula, followed by the indefinite article a. One seems a better fit here. Pronouns. You may have already noticed some personal pronouns that kind of resemble English ones. The main ones are
Me, you, him,
Note that im can be either masculine or feminine.
we, uno, them,
The most interesting pronoun here is
uno.
because it doesn't come from English. It comes from the Igbo pronoun unu. Note that there is no difference between the subject pronouns and object pronouns in Patois. So, for example, me is the equivalent of both I and me in English. There are also no separate forms for possessive adjectives. My car is.
Me car.
You simply place the same personal pronoun before the noun. For possessive pronouns, like mine in English, the preposition fi,
Fi.
which means to or for, is used before the pronoun.
That the car for me.
Word for word, that their car is to me. But in natural English, that car is mine. The preposition fi is also used before verbs, like to in English.
In love to big up himself.
He loves to boast. Big up is a phrasal verb, meaning to give someone a thumbs up or show respect to someone. Fi is not always used before a verb where you would have an infinitive in English. It seems to depend on the verb that comes before. And in some cases, it seems to be optional. And since we're on the topic of verbs, there are basically no verb conjugations in Jamaican Patois, with the exception of some words like fibi, meaning to be in English, which has a different conjugated form. But still, it's only one conjugated form, a. So present tense verbs have just one form, regardless of the subject.
Me read, him read.
As we saw before, the present progressive can be expressed by adding a before the verb, or de.
Him a read a book.
He's reading a book. The past tense is sometimes not indicated and needs to be inferred from the context, but it can be indicated with one of three markers: when, did, or been.
Him did read a book.
Him went read a book.
These sentences mean he read a book in the simple past. The progressive marker a can also be used with the past tense to express the past progressive.
Him went a read a book.
He was reading a book. Ben is more like a present perfect progressive marker.
Him been read a book.
This means he has been reading a book. The future is normally expressed using the verb go, as in English.
Them a go read a book.
They are going to read the book. A go is like are going to in English. And the future is also often expressed using we, like will in English.
Them will read the book.
They will read the book. And a different sentence, since I'm tired of talking about people reading books.
John will sleep on the bed there.
John will sleep on that bed.
John will sleep on the bed there.
Notice here the preposition pan, which means on or upon, the word it descended from. Also notice dat de,
That day.
literally that there, which we saw before. Notice that dat de can be split by the noun, with dat coming before and de coming after. Questions. Yes or no questions are simple in patois. You simply raise your intonation.
You went go a beach?
Did you go to the beach? Word for word it's you, past tense marker, go to beach. Notice that there's no question inversion or use of did as there is in English. It's no different from the sentence meaning you went to the beach, except that it has rising intonation. And again, here we see the word a used as a preposition showing movement towards something, like to in English. For open questions, many of the interrogative pronouns, in other words question words, resemble English ones, with some phonological changes.
What uno a do?
What are you doing?
Where you a go?
Where are you going?
Who have the book?
Who has the book? But there are some differences too, like the way to ask why.
What make?
From English, what make?
What make him a ball?
Why is she crying? Notice the word bawl, which in English means to cry loudly or uncontrollably, but in patois it just means to cry. Now that we've had a look at some of the basic features of Jamaican patois, let's look at a couple more sentences and see what we discover. Because I don't know where my wife is, I have to go cook dinner for myself.
True, me no know where my wife there. Me have to go cook dinner for myself.
Word for word it's because I know where my wife is, locative, I have to go cook dinner for myself. The first word, true, means because and indicates the reason for something. Me means I, because it's the subject in this sentence. No is the basic way of expressing a negative, as in English. In the simple present, in other words, for habitual action or states, no is used by itself. But with other tenses or aspects, it can combine with the tense or aspect marker. The present progressive negator is na, a combination of no and a, the progressive aspect marker. This is also used to express negation in the future. And also, never is used for the past, like never in English. In the phrase me wife, me functions as a possessive adjective, like my. Remember that de is the copula that is used for locative meaning, indicating location. Hafi means have to, a combination of have and fi, meaning to. Dina means dinner, and fi myself means for myself, with fi meaning to or for. And one final sentence.
So me no like them people, them chatty.
This means I don't like those people, they talk too much. Word for word it's I no like those people, they excessively chatty. In this sentence, we can see dem twice, but used in different ways. The first dem is a demonstrative adjective, like those in English. In the second instance, it's the subject pronoun they. Dem is also used in a different context as a plural marker, with dem coming after the noun.
The puss them,
Means the cats.
me ears them.
Means my ears. Notice that ears, from English ears, is normally singular in patois. To be made plural, it's followed by dem. After that, chatty chatty.
Chatty.
This is a reduplication of the word chatty, which means chatty. Reduplication is common in Jamaican patois, sometimes to intensify an adjective, like in this case. As you can see, Jamaican patois is quite similar to English in many ways, and with that sliding scale between full-on patois on the one hand and standard English on the other, certain speakers' patois is more mixed with English than others. That leads some people to believe that patois is nothing but English spoken with a Jamaican accent with a little bit of slang thrown in. But the full-on patois basilect has its own grammatical features, its own vocabulary, and its own phonological features that make it quite distinct from standard English. The question of the day, to anyone from Jamaica or Jamaicans living abroad, to what extent do you use patois, and to what extent do you use standard English? Does it depend on the situation? And to speakers of English, native speakers or otherwise, what do you think of Jamaican patois? How much of it are you able to understand? I'll add some links in the description of this video so you can hear some more real-life samples of patois. If you enjoyed this video, check out the different lang-focused social media accounts like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, etc. And as always, I want to give a very special thanks to my Patreon supporters, especially my top-tier Patreon supporters, whose names appear right here on the screen. Many special thanks to them. And to everyone, thank you for watching and have a nice day.